this evening. We're at Hal's Matthews' studio. He's a potter, and we're going to be seeing how a potter presents the work that you'll later see down at the Missoula Art Shop. Take it away.
Okay. I'm Hal Matthew. I've been a potter for over 30 years. I never went to school to do it. I just kind of learned it on my own. I'm just saying that so people can know that this is something that you can do on your own. I work with porcelain and I fire electrically. It's called oxidation firing. And I'm just going to tonight go through the steps I do to make a teapot, since we're having a teapot show. Starting with the fundamentals of mixing up the clay to make sure it's nice and well worked, and this is called wedging. And it's done this way, kind of like you would knead dough for bread. And this is called, what I'm doing is called spiral wedging. It's probably thousands of years old, this technique. You can see it, the clay just keeps working itself around like that. Then rip off a chunk big enough for a teapot and wedge that nicely. I've already got some made up here, so I'll just throw one of those on the wheel. This is the part of the process that drives beginners nuts, because it looks so easy, but it's so hard to do. It's called centering, and you have to have the clay perfectly centered before you can, what is called, throw a pot. So I get this as round as possible, get it in the center of the wheel as best I can. Start the wheel in motion. This is a power wheel. Get some water on it to lubricate it so it doesn't stick to my fingers. And I'll just force the clay into the middle, pushing down on it and squeezing in with my hands. And make it rise. Push it down again. This is kind of this process of making the clay rise and then pushing it down again mixes it up and helps get it properly centered. You can tell clay is centered when you put your hands around it and it's no longer wiggling. See, my hands are just perfectly still. Now I'll begin to open it up by pushing my thumbs down into the center. Nicely. We're just going to make essentially a hollow place in the clay. Clay is very plastic and sticky, and the particles stick together so that you can move it around and the particles tend to stay together and stretch as you force them in one direction or another. So I'm going to continue to open up this ball of clay until I get to where I think would be a nice bottom. I test this with a needle just to make sure the bottom is neither too thick or too thin. That feels about right. I'm going to widen out the bottom a little bit by pushing this hand out toward this hand, thusly. Make the bottom nice and flat. Now, what I do when I'm throwing a pot, I pinch the clay at the bottom and I pull it up with my fingers, and it rises along with my fingers. So we'll start that process. And since this will be a teapot, I want it to be kind of narrow at the top and sort of roundish. So I'm going to begin to make that shape in the initial stages of throwing. I'm pushing out with my inside hand. Now I'm going to push in with my outside hand. You can see the shape start to take form. Get some water out of there. A little bit of water is needed for a lubricant, but I don't need too much. I just usually dab some of this slip in place, and then, as you can see, I'm squeezing between my fingertips like this, and then I'm pulling it up. You should be able to, is this in the way here? You should be able to see this rise. up smaller and smaller. And get my hand down in there one more time for another pull. Now the walls of the body are about probably an eighth of an inch thick, or a little bit more than that. And that's just about right. You don't want to make a teapot too thin because you want it to retain heat. So you want some mass there, but on the other hand, you don't want it so heavy that it's difficult to pick up when it's full. So I'll just shape that a little bit more at the bottom, thin that out some, make it a little rounder. Now I'll start to push the pot in a little bit by, I have one finger higher than the other here, so that's kind of overriding it and kind of squeezing the clay back toward the center. You want to make the lid hole small enough so that it doesn't lose a lot of heat, but not so small that you can't get a T-ball in there. I'm smoothing this out with a rib. I like my clay surface to be nice and smooth because I do a lot of painting and decorating on my pottery. That's probably a good size opening for a teapot lid.
It looks so easy when you do it.
I know, and that's as I said, that's the frustrating thing for beginners because it takes a long time to learn to center the clay and to control it this way.
Now, how long have you been doing this?
Over 30 years.
Over 30 years?
Yeah, I got started by, when I was in graduate school, I just saw a guy making pottery, and I thought, oh, I've got to learn how to do that. So I just kind of figured out a way to learn. I bought a little wheel and set it in my basement. And now I'm going to trim the bottom of this with a stick. I just get it nice and wet, and I'm just going to take the excess clay off with this stick and make it make the form a little bit rounder. Then I'm going to smooth it off with the rib. Like that. Now, since I'm going to be putting a lid on this, I have to know what size to make the lid, so I use a pair of calipers. And these are about set, just about right. These are from the ones I made yesterday. I think I just sort of get programmed to make things about the same. Okay. Now I'm going to step up for a little bit and take this wheel off and take the pot off the wheel. So first I have to dry my hands off. Are you running? Since I don't throw with much water, the pots I make tend to still be pretty dry, so I can just go ahead and pick them up like that. Oh, I haven't cut it off yet.
I was wondering about
Left
that.
out a step. Use a wire, cut it off on the bottom, and then just pick it up and set aside and wait for it to dry. Now, I'm going to make the lid and spout from another piece of clay, but it's from the same batch so that they're both the same stiffness. You want to make your lid especially from the clay is equally stiff so that they shrink together and then it will fit. Almost got that pot. This is called throwing off the hump. And I'll show you how I can make some tea bowls for this. If I were going to make a tea set, then I'd make the pot, and then I'd make some little tea bowls to go with it. So I'm going to center this mass of clay, and I'll just be working off the top part of it. sometimes when I'm making a lot of bowls, I'll have a big mass of clay, this big, and then I'll just center the top and just keep making bowls until I'm all the way down to the bottom. When you have kind of big hands, it's hard to center small pieces of clay on the wheel, so this is ideal to overcome that problem. So I open the clay again. I just kind of arbitrarily decide how far down to go. It's going to be a tea bowl, so I don't want it too big. I go down about, well, you can see how far down I am. Then I pinch in from this side and do the same thing you saw me doing before with the teapot. Kind of a small teapot, so I won't make these bowls very big. Make them look so they go together nicely as a set. Get the water out of there. And take the rib and smooth it. These will have to be trimmed later. What I do is I just push the stick in like that, and then you can cut it off. Thusly. And I can just pluck it off the wheel. Like that. And maybe I would make like a set of those. I would only make 6 of them or so. Now, I want to make the lid to fit that teapot. Usually when I make teapots, I make several of them at a time, and then I make the opening the same size so I don't have to reset the calipers. There are 2 or 3 ways to make a lid. I'll make a couple of different kinds just in case somebody is a hobby potter at home and would like to see the varieties of lids. The lid for this teapot is formed so that it'll take a lid that fits down inside it. But if it were a pot with a little rim around the top, like a jam jar or something, you'd make a lid this way. Very simple. Like that. Then you'd set your calipers to the appropriate size. And then, as I did with the tea bowl, just force in a stick and cut off. And after it's set up some, then I would turn this upside down in the pot and trim this down with a wire loop. So now I'll make the lid that is the style I need for this particular teapot. And once again, that lid is right side up. This one will be upside down. With a little flange that goes down in, just like that. And then boom it so. Make this a little bit long so that when you set it down into the teapot, it catches a little bit so it won't pop off when you're pouring tea. That's the hope anyway.
So, tell me a little bit of the history. Where did teapots generally, originated and stuff? Do you know?
I beg your pardon?
Teapots generally originated?
Oh, teapots are, the vessel form. I mean, the earliest form of pottery are vessels because that's what people made. They needed to, they couldn't go down to Kmart and buy a bowl. They had to make it, and so we don't know, of course, because there's not much written history about it, but certainly the early forms of pottery were functional and practical. So this is about the right size for this lid. And then probably people they would fire their pottery in their campfires until it got hard enough to use, and probably they made some scratch marks on it and thought, well, this looks kind of interesting. So that's where maybe decoration began, and they learned that the hotter the fire, the more durable the pottery. And one thing led to another, and pottery made 2,000 or 3,000, 2,000 years ago, maybe 3,000 years ago in China is beyond our comprehension even. I have no idea how they did it, but they were able to make beautiful, beautiful porcelain pottery 2,000 years ago, but without power wheels, of course, without ball bearings, without all the modern contrivances. So that's the lid, and it'll fit, this way in that teapot later on, and then I'll trim it. Then the next important ingredient is the spout. So I make a real slender column at the top of this hunk of clay. Open it up with my finger. And then I push it out at the base and then funnel it in like that. Use a little needle or something since I can't get my finger down it anymore, to pull it up and make it more slender. And I'll just cut it off just like the other things I cut off with a stick. And then wire through. And then set this aside too. And later I'll trim this at an angle like that so it'll fit on the round surface, and the spout will be popping up. So those are the components of a teapot. And now I'll demonstrate how to trim the various parts of it and put them together. Porcelain clay is made up of ingredients such as kaolin and ball clay and feldspar, perhaps some talc. This clay body comes from the Archie Bray Foundation in Helena. It's a ceramics distributor for a lot of territory. The next closest one is Seattle. So I just get clay from Archie Bray Foundation that's been all mixed up nicely and boxed and ready to use. But some potters dig their own clay from their hillsides and whatnot. The clay around Missoula isn't very good to use for making pottery with, so most of us get our clay elsewhere. I'm just, this is a way of centering this. I hold my finger there to see where it comes closest, and then I move it away a little bit. This is just kind of so then I'll put some clay down here to support this in place, just so I can trim it a little bit. It doesn't need much trimming, but it's kind of uneven, and I'd rather have it with a nice smooth contour. So I use a trimming tool like this. It's a wire loop. It just essentially cuts into the clay, about the same diameter as a cheese cutter. Just gonna take a little of this off. And then all this scrap that's fallen falling away, I reuse for the most part. I just let it dry out and then I soak it in water and then rework it. Clay's kind of expensive, but not terribly so. I'll just smooth this out. And I'll just depress this foot like that with my finger. And this is the immortal part of it. This always makes a potter feel good. You just write your name in the bottom of your pot. And then, thousands of years later, when archaeologists are trying to figure out what made us tick, I'll come across some of my old pots maybe and they'll say, Matthew, wonder what he did for, I wonder what he was all about. Okay, so now I'll just pop it over and recenter it so that I can trim the lid. These concentric circles on the wheel head help. Looks like they came pretty close. Up there maybe. Yeah, that's good enough. So I'm going to put the anchor of the pot again with this clay. I measured these with the caliper so it'll fit down there nicely. And let's see if this one fits as well. That one fits a little bit better maybe. So now I'll trim that with the wire tool again. Close enough. Need to make a knob for these because they're such small lids that you can just pick them off with your finger. I'll just add kind of a little bit of decoration to this thing. I'll put a little line there. And then I'll exaggerate that a little bit more. Kind of like lathe work. People who do woodwork are probably looking at this now and saying, well, I do about the same thing with wood. I just get my sharp tool and trim away whatever I don't want. Trim away whatever doesn't look like a teapot. I'll put a little bit of a swirl design in this. Okay. Now we're done with that part of it. And I'll just set this lid aside. Now, I'll put this up on this board so I can work with it a little bit. I want to, these spouts are getting kind of dry. I want to cut this spout. I told you I was going to be doing that at an angle so that it fits. So what I do is just put this wire on here like that and then angle it down about like that and then pull. So now I have a spout that will fit pretty closely on the, kind of bend it a little bit. Yeah, okay. Now I mark about where the spout, the bottom of the spout should be close to the top of the pot, because if you fill it up, you don't want tea dribbling out like that. So I'll just kind of mark this. This way. And I use a knife. Let's see. Here's one. To cut this out. Some potters use like a regular drill bit and drill the holes like that to strain the tea, but it's not the way I do it. This is This doesn't have to be very neat or clean or symmetrical because you never see it really. Now, to make my clay parts adhere to one another, I use vinegar. Vinegar has, for some reason, the property of not making clay shrink. If you make clay wet with vinegar, it won't shrink the way it will if you make clay wet with water, because as the water goes out, the clay shrinks, and then parts don't hold together so well. So just kind of learned this trick of using vinegar. Get that nice and wet. Then I'll just put this there like that. Press it into place. Use a damp sponge to get the seams all put together. That's pretty good, I think.
Sounds
Just kinda
great.
look at it and see if it looks about right. That looks about right. Looks like a good positioning of the spout. And the next step is the handle. I made these handles earlier. I just have a large lump of clay, and I just kind of pull it down, keeping my hands wet, keep pulling it out until it's slender. And then I form it into, I kind of like to do a little curlicue at the bottom of my handles. So I'll just turn the pot to its side and figure out a good position for the handle on the clay body. And that looks about right. Yeah, I think that'll fit pretty well. So once again, I rough this up a little bit with a needle or something just so the moisture will get in there and maybe help it stick a little better. A lot of these are mysteries. Some potters do things one way and they say it has to be that way, and some other potters say, well, you can't do it that way, it has to be this way. And every potter just kind of makes her own way or his own way of doing things, and they stubbornly adhere to that. And over the years, it's good to be able to change a little bit once in a while. So I'm just forcing this handle on like that, and I'm going to push it into place with my finger's kind of thin. And then I just kind of push the bottom in. I'll smooth it out a little bit with the sponge. So, now we have one completed teapot. Ta-da! And I'll just let this sit for a while until it dries. And then I have to bisque. It's called bisque firing. I'll show you my kiln over there in a second. Get fired to about 1800 degrees, and that's what's called the bisque firing. So the pot is hard, but not totally sealed up, so it still absorbs moisture. Then I do my decorating, and then put a clear glaze on it, and then fire it again to cone 6, which is a temperature of about 2100 degrees. Yeah. And then it's done. So most pottery is fired twice. In fact, the word bisque firing comes from a French word from a bakery term, meaning it was a kind of roll that got baked twice, and so potters kind of took up the phrase. So, we'll just put this over on a shelf, and it'll sit with all the other pots and wait for the heat. And we're going to go look at some other people's interpretations of teapots. There are many ways to. I'll show you another teapot that I made by hand building, if you'd like to see that.
Sure.
It's just bisque fired right now. Yeah. Okay. This is a teapot that I made by hand. So I rolled out this like making something out of wood almost. You roll out slabs of clay. Then I had a form that I made out of cardboard, and I cut the pieces out. I cut a piece just like this, just if you can just see the flat part of it. I cut 2 of those, and then I cut another strip like this, and I laid this one down, and I put the strip around it like that, and then I laid the other piece in place. And then I made the handle and the spout in the traditional way. And I pulled this handle, the way I would make other handles. And it was going to be my tunnel glove teapot. And this is a little boat that I made that would have the sugar in it, right there. And I had a heart on top of it, but the heart blew off in the firing, so that kind of ruined the mood. So I'll have to...
It's really cute, though. It's kind of cute. It is cute.
So I'll probably make another lid for that at some point that has the heart still on it. And then eventually I'll have my tunnel glove teapot.
There you go. It's great.
This style will have a cane handle. I have some rush, I guess it's called. I don't know what it is. It's small, round diameter stuff that I'll soak and make it wet and then loop around and make a nice little cane handle. Oh. There are other things I sometimes do with clay, decorated just with my fingers, say.
I like that.
Push
That's
in
cute.
to make indentation. So there are a lot of ways to make a teapot.
See you
at the shop.
See you in the shop, and we'll learn some more about teapots.
Yeah,
okay.
All right.
This is the Nancy Bluebird Show in Montana, and this is part 2 of Hal's Martin, is that right?
Matthew.
Matthew, I'm sorry. Hal Matthew. You saw a little bit earlier that there was the work in his shop creating beautiful teapots, and we're down at the museum. And we're down at the Missoula Artist Shop. We will be filming periodically all summer long. Here are some of the exhibits. And today we're talking about teapots, and there's a lot of artists that has contributed to the show. And Hal is going to go ahead now, and he's just going to run us through the art exhibit.
Yeah, we decided to have a teapot show this summer, and invited many of the potters from around this area, most of whom contributed pieces. It's something we'd like to do on an annual basis, and perhaps even get more artists and potters involved, and maybe get a bigger space to do it. As you can see, this is a pretty small space, but there are about 25 pieces in here. I'll just start right over here. The song, I'm a little teapot, short and stout, here is my handle and here is my spout. This is Jonathan Qualvin's contribution. He's a sculptor. He works in cement. He kind of has achieved a way of making beautiful flowing lines from troweling cement, the kind of cement you use to pour your driveway. And another piece here on the wall is by Glenn Parks. It's called The Little Teapot Blows Its Top. It's actually a ceramic insert in the frame. Glenn is a member of the Missoula Artist Shop, and he and his wife Amity make pottery here under the green portfolio label. And the other wall piece is also by a Missoula Artist Shop artist, Sue Spanky. This is a paper piece, kind of whimsical. She's made like a tea pot that's like a tea bag, and little Japanese paper and Japanese folding techniques called origami. She's attached some little tea bag tags to it, and the rest of it is decoration is copper wire. And then starting over here is a teapot by Blair Clemo, It's Blair works at the clay studio in Missoula. This is a soda and salt-fired piece. I don't know if you can pick up the kind of orange peel effect here, but that's what you get when you fire with salt. It's a very nice result, and he's kind of put a whole bunch of little pieces together there to make one teapot. He probably threw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces to make that little pot. The one next to it is by Steve Thorstenson, also one of the potters in the Missoula Artist Shop. This is oxidation fired. This is, he calls it killing 2 birds with 1 stone ware. And the top part of the teapot is a vase, the lid. Oh, kind of whimsical. This pot is by David Pledge. He's one of the potters at the clay studio in Missoula. This is a reduction-fired stoneware pot. David sells his pottery at Sutton West. And this piece is by Mara Sakatsia. She works at the clay studio. This pot has been fired in what is called an onigama kiln. It's a long kiln that climbs a hillside, and that's why they get the draft that climbs up like that. And it usually has several chambers, and you can put thousands of pots in one firing, and it takes days to fire it. They fire with wood, and you can see some of the ash drippings and whatnot from that firing. Here are a couple of teapots. It was a collaboration between Beth Lowe, who's the head of ceramics department at the University of Montana, and one of her students, Megan Bogdanovich. These are porcelain, it's reduction fired. Beth made the forms, and Megan did the decoration. And this one says on the lid, 100% pure, genuine, fake Beth Lowe teapot. That's because it isn't all Beth Lowe's work. Here's another teapot that was done in the onigama kiln, wood-fired, by Paul Northway. He's a Master of Fine Arts candidate at the University of Montana. We didn't make any rules for this teapot show, so you didn't have to make them out of clay. This one is made out of steel and cast iron. It's by George Ibarra. He's the director of the Dana Gallery, and he just welded this all together just out of stuff that you'd find pretty much at a hardware store. Pretty heavy. This is an earthenware teapot by Gloria Bannister. She is also a graphics designer. She worked for quite a while with Jay Rummel, the late Jay Rummel, in his studio. Jay was a potter, painter, printmaker, musician, philosopher extraordinaire. If I had invited Jay to do a teapot for this show, some people around town would remember that he would say something like, "Oh yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, I'll make you a teapot, you bet. Yeah, I'll get right on it. I'll get over to my studio and make one today." That's how he talked. This is by Patrick Ekman. He's works as the tech support person at the University Ceramics Department. He owns Basin Creek Pottery in Basin, Montana, and this is a hand-built reduction-fired piece. This is another artist from the clay studio. His name's Jason Loffer. He's the gallery director there. This is another salt and soda fired piece. You can see some of the orange peel. What they do is when the kiln is red hot, they throw soda in, and it creates kind of a glaze effect on the pots. Over here is another one of the really some good potters working at the clay studio. This black piece is by Mike Kurtz. He's has a BFA from, he has an MFA from the University of Montana. This is also soda fired, but you don't see the soda effect so much on this. It's just pretty much a matte black finish. This one is titled Red Ribbons. It's by Doug Grimm, a longtime Missoula potter, has a pottery instruction business. He named this for a carousel horse, and the carousel horse was modeled after the horse that brought the first printing press to the Missoula Valley. That's Doug's. It's earthenware and oxidation fired. I'll move up here. This precious little piece is by Rebecca Fisk. She's a BFA candidate at the University of Montana. This is earthenware. And this is one of my pieces. This is my contribution to the show. This is how I work. I paint on porcelain. This is a little pot I made for a friend of mine. I call it the Parrot Whisperer. That's mid-range fired porcelain. This is another student at the university, Orville Chigbro. He threw this form on the wheel, and probably this form too, made a couple of, pieced it all together. This is probably made of 1, 2, 3, 4 different components thrown on the wheel. And there's the lid. It's reduction fired stoneware. Here's a piece by Andre Van Nuys. You can see her work at the Dana Gallery and the Flower Bed. This is porcelain, and decorated porcelain. This is what is called wax resist. She painted these wax designs on a white clay, or a white glaze, and then put this other glaze over the top, which didn't stick to where the wax was. That's how you get that decoration. This piece is by Janet Whaley, an MFA graduate of the University of Montana. She's a studio potter here. It's hand-built and thrown. What distinguishes Janet's work, and is quite interesting, is she uses what we call luster glazes. These little bright bits of color, the gold and so forth, are glazes that melt at a real low temperature, and they're metal-based and quite expensive, and they fire real brightly. Make a nice hole. This is from another potter with the Missoula Artist Shop, Mimi Werner. She has Lava Jazz Studio in Finley Point. This is a beautiful little porcelain piece, reduction fired. Another potter at the Clay Studio, Jerry Baldwin. This he calls the Black Tea Crock. It's a soda-fired stoneware, and you can see the pitting again from that influence of the soda in the kiln. This one is a porcelain piece by John Ward of Florence. He's been around this area for a long time. Just really a classic porcelain piece. Just the way, it's just, he's kind of like a potter's potter. This is just a beautiful, beautiful piece. And finally, we have some unusual entries from glass blowers at Cloud Cap Studio down near Florence. This one is by Robin Rogers. It's soft glass is what this is called, and this couldn't be used. It could be used to hold cold tea. You wouldn't want to put anything hot on or put it on the stove. It would crack. This one, however, by Christopher McElroy, is made from the kind of glass that Corningware is made of. It's a glass that has some flux in it so that it doesn't expand and crack so much. And it's just very light. And you might think this was a commercial piece until you look at the mark on the bottom where it was stuck to the rod. Where this is actually a torch piece, whereas this is blown. So that's the teapot show. And making teapots, there are no rules really. You just get to have fun. You just get to cut loose.
And none of these teapots are going to blow their stack, right?
No, not while we're standing here, I hope.
No. Okay, well, Hal, it's been very interesting and to see your work at your shop and see all these marvelous teapots. Talking about that song, that was the first song I taught my oldest daughter how to sing, and she did the reminiscing of it, the actions of it and everything. So, and I just love tea. Tea's one of my thing. I really love that. But that's it for this show, and I guess until next time, see you later.